9 out of 10 anglers commit the same error while jigging without even realizing it. It isn't
He's
about the
got
gear,
one!
the location,
Yes,
or the
got
soft
it!
plastic. It's about what happens to the lure during those critical seconds when it is sinking to the bottom. Today, we are going to break down 8 such mistakes in great detail.
Step
by
1. Attach and lock
with
the
no
reel.
fluff.
Step
Today, we will analyze 8 mistakes that anglers make when jigging, ranging from rod selection to retrieval style.
The bent rod
and
is
from
ideal
line
for light
thickness
lures and
to how
trout.
you
Use the
work
foregrip
the
for
leader.
max.
Some of these errors might seem like minor details, but they are exactly what determines whether you catch fish or go home empty-handed. Let's get started. Write in the comments what your most frequent jigging mistake is, or just write, "I do everything right, but they aren't biting." And we will figure it out together. The rod. Let's begin at the very start with the tackle. Many anglers grab whatever is available or what previously worked for crankbaits. That is already the first mistake. For jigging, you require a spinning rod with a fast action. Fast action means the rod bends only in the top third, while the rest remains stiff. Why is this necessary? Because in jig fishing, you must constantly feel the lure. What is it doing? Where is it? Has it hit the bottom, or is it still sinking? Did it pass through a hole, or go over a hump? A slow or parabolic action muddles all of this information. The feedback simply doesn't reach you. Another common mistake with the rod is using a stiff blank designed for twitching jerkbaits. While the weight rating might fit, such a rod isn't designed for a delicate jigging retrieve. You won't see the lure's action, and you won't feel the bite the moment it drops. Now, regarding length. People used to not think much about it, taking whatever they had. 2M or 2.20 meters. Now, the situation has changed. There are fewer fish in the rivers, and they have moved away from the shore. You need to cast further. Here, the rod length becomes an essential tool. The optimal length for shore jig fishing is between 240 and 216 centimeters. This range provides both casting distance and excellent retrieve control, as well as tip visibility. Specifically about the tip. The tip of a jigging rod should be soft, while the blank is stiff. This isn't a contradiction, it's the design. A soft tip indicates a bite that you might not have felt with your hand. Sometimes the fish takes it very cautiously, just holding the lure slightly on the paws or giving it a tiny tug. The tip registers this. Without it, you simply won't know there was a strike. For those mastering micro-jigging, a style using very light lures from 1 to 5G, there is a separate recommendation. Get a spinning rod with a solid tip. Solid means a solid, non-hollow tip. It is softer, more sensitive, and makes it much easier to read the retrieve, especially when you are just learning to understand what is happening to the lure on the bottom. Summary on the rod. Fast action, length from 240 centimeters to 260 centimeters, and a soft or solid tip. This isn't a whim or marketing, it's a tool. If the tool is wrong, the result will reflect that. The line. Braid or mono? This question was settled long ago. Only braid. Braided line doesn't stretch, meaning it transmits everything. The bite, the bottom contour, and how the lure moves in the water. Monofilament line dampens all of this. If you are jigging with mono, you are working blind. But with braid, there is a mistake too, and it's very common. The angler buys a thick braid just to be safe. What if there's a snag, a big fish, or it breaks? The logic is understandable, but the result is poor. Thick braid catches the water like a sail, creating resistance when the lure is falling. The lure doesn't fall where it should, takes longer than it should, and you don't feel when it touches the bottom. All the sensitivity of the tackle is reduced to zero, even if you have an excellent rod. For shore fishing for pike and perch, The working braid diameter is from 0.10 to 0.4 mm. This is the actual diameter, not what is written on the packaging. Many manufacturers understate the numbers. You buy 0.14, but in reality, you get 0.20. Therefore, if you need a thin braid, buy trusted brands. You don't skimp on thin braid. There is another point that is often underestimated: the color of the braid. Many try to get dark or green so the fish won't be spooked. This is a mistake, especially for those still mastering jigging. Get a bright braid, yellow or lemon. Why? Because with such a braid, you will see when the lure touches the bottom. The moment it touches, the line goes slightly slack. With a dark braid in the wind, especially in cloudy weather, you will simply miss this moment. But with a yellow one, it's always visible. Experienced anglers also use this trick because there are conditions: crosswinds, rain, poor light, when even a sensitive tip doesn't have time to react, but the line does. Finally, about the breaking strain. Many look at the number and think, the braid is up to 4 kilos, so I won't pull out a fish heavier than 4. That's not true. The tackle has a drag system. If it's set correctly, you can easily land a trophy of 5, 7, or 8 kilo. The main thing is not to rush and not to force it. The braid breaks not from the weight of the fish, but from sudden jerks and an improperly set drag. Waiting. Here we get to the main point. If I had to pick one mistake that causes a lack of bites when jigging, this would be it. Incorrect weight selection. This exact mistake cost most anglers half their catch, and many their entire catch. To explain the logic, the entire jigging retrieve is built around one key moment. The lure rises, glides, falls to the bottom, and it is exactly during the fall, or right after touching down, that most bites occur. For pike, almost 90% of strikes happen during the falling phase. Zander picks up the lure right at the bottom. Perch attack at the lowest point. This is where the weight of the sinker decides everything. If the weight is too heavy, the lure drops instantly. Boom! And it's already on the bottom. The predator has no time to react. No bites. If the weight is too light, the lure hovers, glides for a long time, and sinks slowly. By the time it finally touches the bottom, the fish has long lost interest, or didn't have time to approach. The ideal pause is from 1 to 3 seconds for pike. For zander, it's even shorter, up to a second. Zander likes it when the lure taps the bottom sharply and frequently. For perch, the pause can be slightly longer. It's not as demanding about speed, but it won't wait forever either. How do you choose the weight on the spot? Just make a cast. 2 turns of the reel handle and stop. Count. 1, 2. The lure touched the bottom. Excellent. That's a working weight. If it fell in half a second, put on a lighter one. If you count to 5 and it's still sinking, put on a heavier one. I remember a guy wrote in a fishing chat, put on 14G, bottom is 3 mm, 2 hours without a bite. They told him, try 5. Half an hour later, he caught a pike. That's all the magic. Neither the spot changed nor the lure, only the weight. But it was this weight that changed the lure's behavior, and the fish finally noticed it. Now, an important point many don't consider: the time of year and water temperature. In summer, when the water is warm and fish are active, the pause can be shortened. Even a second or half a second can trigger a strike. In autumn and in cold water, fish become sluggish. They don't chase the lure. They need time. The pause increases to 3 to 4 and sometimes 5 seconds. The same tackle and the same spot, but a different weight is needed because the fish's activity has changed. Another subtlety is the shape and buoyancy of the lure. Different grubs, craws, and swim baits behave differently in the water. One soft plastic sinks, while another is neutrally buoyant. On the exact same 10G weight, they will fall at different speeds, so there is no universal correct weight. For each lure, the weight is selected individually for specific conditions, depth, current, and fish activity. And the last thing on weighting, don't be lazy about changing the weight as you move along the shore. The bottom is uneven. Where it was 3 meter 20 steps later, it might be 6 or 1 and 1 to 2. If you fish all day with one weight, not changing it when the depth changes, you are constantly losing bites without realizing it. Write in the comments what weight you use most often. It's interesting to see who is overweighting and who has already found the balance. The lure. It would seem like a simple question. Buy some plastics, rig them, and you're fishing. But here too, there is a mistake that is constantly made. An angler goes to a body of water where the main fish is perch, but in his box he has 4 in-swim baits that he usually takes for pike. He rigs them, makes cast after cast, and gets nothing. The perch looks at this huge plastic and leaves. For perch, you need compact lures. Anything up to 2-in slugs, small grubs, little craws. Colors are mostly dark, but bright ones work in the summer too. For active fish, you can take something with action. For passive fish, use passive soft plastics that glide beautifully on the paws. For pike, the lure size depends on what kind of pike are in the water. If the fish aren't large, 1.2 a kilo to a kilo and 1.2 3 to 3.5 in is enough. There's no need to chase after large plastics. When shore fishing, it's hard to cast a large soft plastic where you need it. Plus, small pike simply have a small mouth. They won't swallow it properly. If you are hunting for trophy pike, then yes, from 4 in and up. But that's another story, requiring different tackle and a different approach. Zander and pike are similar in lure selection. Both are predators, and both react to swim baits, slugs, and craws. However, Zander prefers more elongated and thin lures imitating fry, while pike likes volume. Another important point is the number of lures. Beginners often buy a ton of plastics, different shapes, different colors, a huge box. Then, on the fishing trip, they engage in endless swapping, changing every 5 minutes. They change 3 colors, get no bites, and try a 4th. This is a dead end. While you are sorting through plastics, you aren't catching fish. It's better to take 2 or 3 proven lures and focus on the retrieve and finding fish. The retrieve matters more than the shape of the tail. The retrieve. This is perhaps the most delicate topic. You can buy the right tackle and choose the right weight, and the fish still won't bite because the retrieve is wrong. The most common mistake is using the exact same rhythm all day. 2 turns of the reel. Pause. 2 turns. Pause. Monotonous, like a metronome. The fish figure this out quickly, especially under pressure when people visit the water every weekend. Everyone needs to know the basic retrieves. First is the classic step and pause. 2 or 3 turns of the reel, then a pause as the lure falls to the bottom. Hold the rod at 45 degrees to the water, pointing toward the sky. The whole action is in the pause. That is exactly when most bites happen. The second retrieve is a step with a rod pop. It's the same thing, but at the moment of reeling, you add a flick of the wrist. The lure jumps sharply off the bottom, creating the effect of a wounded bait fish. Pike primarily attack exactly this weak and prey. Sabanev described back in the 19th century that pike hunt from ambush and prefer to grab fish that behave unnaturally. This is its instinct, developed over millennia. Third is dragging. The lure touches the bottom, and you start slowly pulling it along the bottom without lifting it. It imitates a feeding bait fish, a goby, or a crustacean. This is very effective on shell beds or hard river bottom when a small cloud of silt rises and the fish react to it. Fourth is the search retrieve. A sharp double pop with the rod while reeling in. Pop again. fast and dynamic. With this retrieve, you quickly cover a large area and find active predators. Once you find them, switch to slower options. For Xander, it's a separate conversation. Xander likes sharp, short dynamics, short wrist twitches with almost no pause. The lure should tap the bottom frequently. The falling phase for Xander is a maximum of a second. It won't wait while the lure glides for a long time. I'll tell you about one incident. I was once standing next to an elderly man on the Moscow River. He was working calmly and unhurriedly. 3 slow turns, a long pause, and another 3 turns. No popping, no rod animation. I thought you couldn't do that, and that the fish wouldn't react. I myself tried to do everything faster, more actively, and more powerfully. He caught 4 pike in 2 hours, while I caught none. Then it hit me. That day the fish wanted a slow, sluggish, hesitant lure. Pike hunt from ambush and react to what seems like easy prey. With my fast movements, I was showing it a healthy, active fish that wasn't worth wasting energy on. An important technical point: do the animation simultaneously with reeling the reel. A common mistake is making a jerk with the rod and then reeling. This makes the line go slack. You lose contact with the lure and simply won't feel a bite that happens right at that moment. Also, don't just work with the reel. The rod is also an animation tool. Rocking, pulls, shaking in place, all this creates unconventional lure behavior. Fish adapt to standard movements. Unconventional ones provoke them, fishing only at the bottom. Most anglers think that jigging is only the step and pause at the bottom. Cast, it falls; lift, it falls. Doing that everywhere limits you significantly. There are situations when the fish are not at the bottom, but above the weeds, in the middle of the water column, or holding above underwater vegetation. In these cases, a classic jig with a pause to the bottom will simply constantly snag grass. What should you do? Retrieve the lure without letting it drop to the bottom. Make a turn. Pause for half a second, and turn again. The lure hovers over the grass. A predator holding there sees it perfectly and attacks. This method is called pelagic jigging, fishing in the water column. It requires a little experience to keep the lure at the right depth, but when the fish are exactly there, it's the most productive option. A classic step and pause in such a place will bring nothing. Another point: don't skip overgrown sections of the bank. Many bypass them to avoid snags, but it is exactly here, at the edge of the grass, that pike hold. Pike are ambush hunters. They hide in the vegetation and come out for prey. Sabanev wrote about this back in the century before last. Small and medium pike live constantly in the reeds and grass, lying in wait for prey. This is their nature, which hasn't changed in hundreds of years. Try taking a light jig head of 2 to 3 G and retrieving the lure right above the grass slowly, almost steadily, sometimes with a slight twitch. The result might surprise you. Stereotypes. This mistake is not about tackle or technique, it's about the mind. An angler once caught well on a 3.5 in yellow swim bait using a step and pause at a depth of 4 deniers. Since then, every fishing trip, he puts on a yellow 3 in swim bait and does a step and pause. When they don't bite, he stays longer, but still no bites, so he assumes the fish aren't active. But the fish are active. They just want something else today. I've been guilty of this myself, taking the exact same plastic because it once got good bites. Then I realized that pike was just hungry and would have bitten a sock, but I took it as a rule. The rule is simple. If they're biting, you fish. If they aren't biting, you look for a solution. You change the color, the shape, or the size. You put on a completely different type of lure. Instead of a grub, try a craw. Instead of a craw, a slug. In summer, the fish are more active and want a livelier, more mobile lure. In autumn, they want a passive, slow one with a long pause. Change the retrieve. If 2 turns and a pause don't work, try 3 slow turns without a pause. Or, conversely, 1 sharp pop and a long wait. You can catch 1 fish from a spot, then change the retrieve, and catch 2 more because the next pike is holding nearby. It saw the lure, but the standard movement didn't trigger it. Something unconventional will trigger it. Experiment. This doesn't mean chaotically changing everything in sight. It means you made 10 casts with 1 retrieve and no bites, so you change 1 parameter and made 10 casts again. Methodically, you find what works today on this body of water. Write in the comments if you've had a case where an unconventional retrieve or a strange lure suddenly produced a result. I read such stories with pleasure. Coarse rigging. The last mistake concerns details that many don't notice. The leader, the snap, and the hook size. All this affects how the lure acts in the water. I once saw an angler with a small 3 cm lure for perch and a steel leader as thick as a knitting needle, plus a huge snap. I asked, "Fishing for perch?" And he said, "Yes." Well, the perch looked at this contraption and didn't bite, because such rigging doesn't let a small lure move properly. It's restricted. The action is killed. A coarse leader with a large snap is not insurance. It's an anchor, especially for small, soft plastics. What is the right way? For every situation, use its own rigging. If you are fishing for perch with a small lure, the leader should be thin, made of fluorocarbon, and the snap should be the smallest size. If there are no pike at all, and the goal is to catch as many perch as possible, you can fish without a leader at all, tied direct. Fluorocarbon is transparent and invisible in the water. It's stiff and has a certain resistance to pike teeth. It's not 100%, but with a small leader of 10, 2, or 15 centimeters, it's a viable option. If pike bite frequently, then use a leader, but choose a thin, flexible one made of soft wire or thin fluoro. A stiff steel leader with a thick snap is for trophy hunting for large pike, not for everyday fishing with small and medium soft plastics. The same goes for hooks. Some put a large hook on a small lure, supposedly for a better hook-up ratio. Yes, it's easier to hook a fish, but the number of bites will drop because a large hook ruins the action of a small lure. The lure starts moving unnaturally and is stiffly restricted. The fish feels this. The conclusion is simple. The rigging must match the lure. Small, soft plastic requires a thin leader, a small snap, and a suitable hook. A large lure for trophy pike allows you to beef up everything else. Summary: let's go over everything we've broken down today. 8 mistakes. Each of them is a missed bite, or 10 missed bites, or an entire fishing trip blanked. First, the rod. Fast action, correct length, soft tip. This is the foundation of lure control. Without the right rod, you are working blind and don't feel the bottom or the bite. Second, the line. Only braid. Thin, high quality, and bright if you are still mastering the technique. Set the drag correctly, and no fish will break it. Third, waiting is the main mistake. The right wait means the right pause. Use 1 to 3 seconds for pike, and up to a second for zander. In summer, the pause is shorter. In autumn, it's longer. Change the weight when the depth changes. Don't be lazy. Fourth, the lure is specific to each fish. Perch wants small and compact. Pike want medium or large, depending on the size of the fish in the water. You don't need 100 lures. You need 3 or 4 working ones and the ability to present them correctly. Fifth, the retrieve. Use variety. slow step and pause, fast search, dragging on the bottom, or pelagic in the water column. Fish get used to one rhythm. A break in the rhythm is exactly what triggers a bite. Sixth, don't fish only at the bottom. Use a retrieve in the water column above the weeds, and don't bypass overgrown areas where pike often hold. Seventh, stereotypes. Don't cling to one lure or retrieve just because you got lucky once. Every day the fish are different, so experiment methodically. Eighth, rigging. Leader, snap, and hook. Everything must match the size of the lure. Coarse rigging kills the action, and killing the action kills the bites. If you eliminate even half of these mistakes, the result will change. Not immediately, but it will change because jigging is a system. When all elements are tuned correctly, the fish start biting. It's not magic, it's logic. Many quit jigging after their first failures, but the reason is almost never that jigging doesn't work. The reason is that one or more of these 8 elements were not tuned. Fix them, and the picture will change. Jigging is one of the most versatile and productive ways to catch predators like pike, zander, perch, chub, and asp. Sooner or later, it will start working for you the way you want. Try it, figure it out, and come to the water understanding what you are doing and why. Then fishing turns from a lottery into a hunt. If these insights change the way you look at your tackle box and your time on the water, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. We are uncovering the techniques that others try to keep hidden. Let's build a better fishing future together. The next treasure of knowledge will be revealed soon.